a quiet town nestled between the woods and the river, a quaint little restaurant called The Last Table had earned a reputation for its intimate atmosphere and exceptional cuisine. Owned by a couple, David and Clara, it was a beloved spot for locals seeking comfort food and warm hospitality. But as winter settled in, a chill swept through the establishment that no amount of steaming soup could dispel. It started with odd occurrences, knocking sounds that echoed from the kitchen at night, the flickering of lights that seemed to dance to an unheard rhythm, and whispers that faded as soon as one turned to listen. The couple shrugged it off as the quirks of an old building, a former house that had been converted into a restaurant decades ago. One cold evening in December, as snow blanketed the ground outside, Clara prepared for the evening's service while David managed the front of the house. The restaurant was fully booked, with couples enjoying candlelit dinners, families sharing laughs, and friends toasting to the holidays. It was a night filled with joy until it wasn't. At the back of the restaurant, a table for two remained unoccupied. David noticed it was the only table left, dimly lit and shrouded in an almost eerie shadow. "Strange no one's taken that one," he muttered to Clara as he cleared another table. She shrugged, busy arranging the flowers that adorned each setting. As the night wore on, the atmosphere began to shift. The sounds of laughter grew distant, replaced by an unsettling silence that seemed to wrap around the last table like a thick fog. Guests began to glance toward the back table, as if drawn by an invisible force. Clara felt it too, a shiver creeping down her spine. Just then, a couple entered the restaurant. They were pale, gaunt, and wore long coats that looked too heavy for the weather. Their eyes were sunken, but they held a strange, magnetic allure. They approached the hostess stand, and David greeted them with a smile. "Table for two," he asked, and they nodded, their faces eerily expressionless. As he led them to the vacant table at the back, Clara's heart raced. Something about them felt wrong, but she couldn't quite place it. David set down their menus, but instead of ordering, they simply stared at each other, communicating in hushed tones that sent a chill through the restaurant. David returned to the front, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The atmosphere felt charged, heavy with anticipation. As the evening progressed, the lights began to flicker more violently, and the temperature in the room dropped sharply. The other diners murmured, some glancing nervously at the couple in the back. Clara made her way to their table to take their order, forcing a smile despite her growing unease. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly. The man looked up at her, his eyes void of warmth. "We'll have the special," he said, his voice smooth yet chilling. "And don't forget the wine, the red." Clara nodded, trying to maintain her composure as she retreated. She glanced back at the couple, and in that brief moment, their faces shifted. For a split second, she saw something monstrous lurking beneath their skin, something that made her blood run cold. "Did you see that?" she whispered to David as they prepared their order. "See what?" he replied, confused. "The couple at the back, there's something off about them." Clara's voice trembled. David dismissed her concerns, attributing it to stress. "It's just a busy night. We're fine." But Clara couldn't shake the feeling. As she moved through the restaurant, serving plates and pouring wine, she kept an eye on the couple. They didn't eat, didn't speak to each other, but their gazes roamed the room, lingering too long on certain patrons, as if studying them. Suddenly, one of the diners at a nearby table stood up, clutching her throat. "I can't breathe," she gasped, her eyes wide with panic. The room erupted into chaos, with chairs scraping against the floor as people rushed to help. Clara darted toward the woman, but before she could reach her, the couple at the back table stood in unison. Without a word, they moved toward the commotion, their presence drawing attention like a magnet. David, who had been trying to assist, froze as they approached. The air thickened around them, charged with an energy that made his hair stand on end. The couple reached the woman, and in an instant, the chaos stilled. A hush fell over the restaurant. The woman's eyes met theirs, and a wave of terror washed over her. She collapsed, gasping for air, as if some invisible force had snatched it from her. Clara's heart raced. "What are you doing?" she shouted, stepping forward. But the couple turned their eyes to her, their gaze piercing through her. "We're here to help," the woman said, her voice unnaturally sweet. "You're also tired." Before Clara could respond, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. A chorus of gasps filled the air, and in that moment, she felt a hand on her shoulder, cold and clammy. She spun around, but there was no one there. The lights flickered back on, revealing the couple standing at the edge of the crowd, their faces obscured in shadow. David yelled for everyone to stay calm, but panic had taken hold. People rushed for the exits, but the doors wouldn't budge. It was as if they were sealed shut. Clara's gaze returned to the couple, who were now smiling, revealing teeth too sharp and too white. "You're also full of energy," the man said, his voice echoing through the room. "Don't you want to share it with us?" David grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her toward the back, desperate to find a way out. But the atmosphere felt thick, like molasses, as if the very air was suffocating them. "We have to get everyone out," Clara shouted. But the couple moved closer, weaving through the panicked crowd. People screamed, but the sound felt muted, as if they were trapped in a bubble of silence. Clara felt a strange pull toward the couple, an irresistible urge to listen to them, to surrender. "Clara, no," David yelled, shaking her. The grip on her arm snapped her back to reality. "We have to fight this." Suddenly, the couple's demeanor shifted. Their smiles faded, replaced by expressions of irritation. "You don't understand," the woman hissed, her voice turning guttural. "You belong to us now." The restaurant shook as if the building itself was alive, and Clara felt a surge of energy from the chaos around her. "David, we need to push through," she yelled. They maneuvered through the crowd, forcing their way toward the kitchen. As they reached the door, Clara glanced back at the couple. Their faces were twisted, monstrous, and full of rage. "You can't escape," they screamed in unison. David flung open the kitchen door, and they stumbled inside, breathless. Clara grabbed a heavy knife from the counter. "We have to fight them," she said, determination rising within her. Outside the kitchen, the chaos intensified. Chairs were overturned, and the air crackled with tension. The couple's voices echoed through the din, taunting, promising darkness and despair. As David and Clara braced themselves, the couple burst through the door, their forms shifting and rippling as if they were made of shadows. "You can't fight us, little chef," the man sneered, eyes glowing with an unholy light. "Get back," Clara shouted, brandishing the knife. "We won't let you take anyone else." But as she lunged, the couple melted into the shadows, vanishing from sight. Clara felt a sudden rush of air as if they had siphoned the energy from the kitchen. David pulled her back, panting. "We can't stay here," he said, fear etched on his face. "We need to find a way out." As they pushed through the back door, Clara glanced back at the restaurant. The last remnants of their cozy diner had transformed into a battlefield of shadows and fear. The couple loomed in the doorway, laughter echoing through the night as they watched the chaos unfold. Clara and David sprinted through the alley behind the restaurant, hearts racing. They could still hear the sounds of terror behind them, the cries of their friends trapped within. "We have to warn the others," Clara cried, but David stopped her. "Look." He pointed to the entrance of the alley where a thick mist had begun to swirl, emanating from the restaurant. It twisted and writhed, a living thing that seemed to beckon them back. They took a step back, horror dawning on their faces. The couple emerged from the mist, their forms more grotesque than before. "You can't run from what you've created," the woman whispered, her voice a haunting lullaby. In that moment, Clara understood. The last table was no ordinary restaurant. It had become a vessel for their darkness, drawing in unsuspecting souls. As they backed away, the couple reached out, their fingers stretching impossibly long, desperate to pull them into the void. But Clara, fueled by desperation and defiance, shouted, "Not today." She hurled the knife at them, its blade glinting in the pale light. It struck the woman in the shoulder, and she howled, a sound that split the night air. For a moment, the shadows quivered, and the couple's grip faltered. Seizing the opportunity, David and Clara turned and ran, their breaths quickening as they burst into the street. As they fled into the snowy night, the sounds of the last table faded behind them, the flickering lights dimming until they were just a memory in the dark. But even as they escaped, a lingering sense of dread settled over them. They knew that the couple would not be easily thwarted, and the darkness that clung to the last table would remain, waiting for its next victim. In the weeks that followed, whispers of the restaurant spread through town. Some claimed it was haunted, others said it had been cursed. The last table eventually closed, The windows boarded up and the sign taken down, but the shadows remained, lurking just beneath the surface, eager for the next chance to claim those who ventured to close. And so, in the heart of winter, the quaint little restaurant became a ghostly legend, a cautionary tale, forever echoing with the laughter of the couple who had come to take what they desired most, life itself. In the heart of a bustling city, tucked between a quaint bookstore and a vintage clothing shop, was a restaurant called La Petite Morte. It boasted a charming atmosphere with dim lighting, rustic wooden tables, and a menu that celebrated the art of fine dining. Each evening, the air filled with the sounds of clinking glasses and laughter, masking the unsettling history that clung to the walls like the faded photographs of past patrons. The restaurant had opened over 50 years ago, and the tales surrounding it had become part of its allure. Legends whispered of a chef who had gone mad and vanished on the night of a particularly lavish banquet, leaving behind an unfinished meal and an unsettling aura. Those who worked there spoke of odd occurrences, glimpses of shadows in the kitchen, and strange noises when the restaurant was closed. Yet, despite or perhaps because of these stories, it remained popular. One chilly autumn evening, Claire, a young food critic, arrived to review La Petite Morte for a prominent culinary magazine. She was excited, having heard tales of its exquisite dishes and mysterious charm. As she stepped inside, the bell above the door jingled softly, and a wave of warmth enveloped her. The restaurant was nearly full, with the soft hum of conversation and laughter surrounding her like a cozy blanket. Claire was shown to a table near the back, where the flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. The waiter, a tall man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes, presented the menu with an air of reverence. Claire ordered the chef's tasting menu, eager to experience the restaurant's renowned creations. As she savored each course, delicate foie gras, a vibrant beet salad, and a succulent lamb dish, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Glancing around, she noticed a couple at a nearby table, their laughter a bit too loud, their glances a bit too lingering. But she dismissed it, attributing her discomfort to the strange ambience of the restaurant. With each course, the tension seemed to build. The dishes were exquisite, yet there was something unsettling about the way the waiter watched her, his eyes glinting with an intensity that made her skin crawl. When the main course of beautifully plated duck with a rich, dark sauce arrived, Claire felt an odd sensation in her stomach, as if something primal was awakening within her. She pushed the thought aside and focused on her meal. Halfway through her dinner, the lights flickered, momentarily plunging the restaurant into darkness. A nervous laughter rippled through the diners, but Claire felt a chill creep down her spine. When the lights returned, the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt thicker, more charged. The couple nearby was gone, and the remaining patrons seemed oddly preoccupied, their conversations hushed. As she finished her meal, the waiter returned, this time with a small, ornate box. "For you," he said, his voice smooth and almost hypnotic. Claire hesitated but opened it to reveal a delicate, intricately designed pastry. A special dessert, inspired by our chef's family recipe. Feeling a mix of excitement and unease, she took a bite. The flavors were complex, an explosion of sweetness and richness that sent a thrill through her. But as she chewed, a dark thought flickered in her mind. Was this truly just a dessert? Suddenly, the restaurant's door swung open, and an older woman entered, her eyes wide and frantic. "You have to get out," she shouted, her voice cutting through the hushed atmosphere. "The chef, he's back." A murmur rippled through the diners, and the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness once more. Claire's heart raced as she felt the weight of the atmosphere shift around her. When the lights returned, the woman had collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. Panic ensued, and the waitstaff rushed to her side. Claire's instincts kicked in, and she grabbed her phone to call for help. But as she did, she felt a presence behind her. The waiter loomed close, his face now a mask of cold intensity. "She shouldn't have come back," he said, almost too quietly for anyone else to hear. "You don't understand what's happening here." The realization struck her. The restaurant was not just haunted by its past, it was alive with something darker. The chef had indeed returned, but not as a mere specter. He was here, weaving his twisted artistry into the fabric of the restaurant, feeding off the souls of his patrons. As the chaos unfolded around her, Claire slipped out of her chair, heart pounding. She needed to leave, to escape whatever darkness had taken hold. But as she made her way toward the exit, she found herself face to face with the figure of the chef. Clad in a blood-stained apron, his eyes glowed with an unnatural hunger. "Stay," he commanded, his voice resonating like a death knell. "You must experience the culmination of my work." Desperation surged through Claire as she darted past him, pushing through the door just as the lights flickered again. Outside, the cool night air hit her like a wave, but she could still hear the murmurs and the echoes of laughter from inside, now twisted and mocking. Stumbling down the street, she couldn't shake the feeling of being pulled back. The pastry she had eaten weighed heavy in her stomach, a reminder of the ritual she had unwittingly participated in. She glanced back, half expecting to see the restaurant's facade glowing eerily, but it appeared ordinary, as if nothing had happened. Days passed, but Claire couldn't shake the experience. The review she wrote barely hinted at the horror she had witnessed. She couldn't bring herself to return to La Petite Morte, yet she felt drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. Weeks later, her editor called her with news. "You won't believe this," he said, excitement lacing his voice. "La Petite Morte is closing down. The owner says it's because of the strange occurrences. They're shutting it down for good." Claire's heart raced, a mix of relief and regret. The chef's final act had been to devour the very essence of those who dared to dine in his establishment. As the restaurant closed its doors for the last time, she felt an unsettling sense of loss. The darkness, once contained within those walls, would now roam free, looking for a new host, a new banquet to feed upon. And as for Claire, she would always wonder if the call of La Petite Morte would haunt her dreams, a tantalizing reminder of the night when she tasted not just food, but the very essence of life and death intertwined. It was a rainy Saturday evening at La Trattoria, a cozy Italian restaurant beloved by the locals. The sound of rain pattering against the windows created a soothing backdrop, and the warm glow of candlelight added to the inviting atmosphere. But as the night progressed, an unsettling tension began to creep in. Laura, a seasoned waitress, was on her usual shift. She moved from table to table, serving hearty portions of pasta and pouring glasses of red wine. Just as the dinner rush began to slow, the door swung open, and a man entered. He was tall and gaunt, his clothes slightly disheveled, as if he had been caught in the rain longer than necessary. He scanned the room before making his way to the bar, where he ordered a drink in a low, raspy voice. The bartender, Mike, frowned as he poured the man's drink. "We're almost out of tables, you know," he said, glancing at the half-empty restaurant. The man simply nodded, his gaze drifting around the room. When he spotted Laura, he raised his hand, signaling for her to come over. "Table for one?" she asked, noting the emptiness of his eyes. "Actually," he replied, a faint smile creeping onto his lips, "I have a reservation." "For two." Laura raised an eyebrow. "I don't see anyone else with you." His smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She'll be here soon, I promise." Feeling a chill creep down her spine, Laura reluctantly led him to a table in the corner, far from the other diners. As she set down a menu, the man's expression changed, becoming almost serene. "I've been waiting for this," he said softly. Hours passed. The rain continued to pour outside, and the restaurant's ambience shifted. The few remaining patrons chatted quietly, but the man sat alone, staring into the distance, occasionally glancing at the door. Laura checked in on him multiple times, but each time he insisted he was waiting for his companion. By 10 o'clock, the restaurant was nearly empty. Laura approached him one last time. "Are you sure you don't want to order? It's getting late." The man looked at her, his eyes suddenly sharp. "You don't understand. She always comes." Feeling uneasy, Laura excused herself and headed to the back, where the kitchen staff was winding down. She shared the strange encounter with Mike, who shook his head. "I don't like it. That guy gives me the creeps." Suddenly, the front door swung open again, and a woman stepped inside. She was drenched from the rain, her hair plastered to her face. As she approached the man, Laura's heart sank. The woman had an almost ethereal quality about her, as if she wasn't entirely there. "Are you ready?" the woman asked, her voice soft and melodic. The man stood, a grin spreading across his face. Finally, he breathed, taking her hand. Laura watched in horror. as the couple turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the faint scent of rain and something else, a hint of decay. She felt a strange compulsion to follow, but Mike grabbed her arm. "Don't," he warned, his voice low. "Let them go." The door swung shut behind them, and an oppressive silence enveloped the restaurant. A moment later, the lights flickered, and the atmosphere grew heavy with an unseen weight. Laura's pulse quickened as she glanced around, her mind racing. She looked back at the table where the man had sat, only to find it completely empty. The couple had vanished without a trace. Days passed, but Laura couldn't shake the feeling of dread. She learned that the restaurant had a history years ago. A couple had disappeared on a night just like this, leaving only their reservations behind. Rumors swirled among the staff that on stormy nights, the couple returned, searching for their long-lost table. As she worked her shifts, Laura often felt the eyes of the man upon her, haunting her from the corner of her mind. Each rainy evening brought back the fear that perhaps they would return, perhaps they would take her next. And every time she heard the doorbell chime, her heart raced, hoping she wouldn't see them again. Alright everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.